If any of you have talked to me in October, you know that the first thing out of my mouth is that, did you know that this is the 100th anniversary of the women's right to vote and to hold and run for elected office? I say that because I consider the suffragist movement 100 years ago, October 10, as being the seminal act that placed us on the path to diversity. And so when we look at 100 years hence from that important moment where men and women wouldn't take no for an answer, where men and women were prompting a novel idea that women could vote and run for office, when it seemed impossible, when they failed in the legislature, when they failed in the ballot box, and we look at where we are 100 years later, and where are we? As already mentioned, we are a female majority on the California Supreme Court. We are the entirety of the Commission on Judicial Appointments, that is the constitutional body entrusted with the honor of confirming or not the governor's appointments to the Court of Appeal and the Supreme Court. And Justice Joan Dempsey Kline, of course, is the person who has served on that and seen the history of that commission and now know that it is entirely of women. That is the Attorney General Kamala Harris, Administrative Presiding Justice Joan Dempsey Kline, and myself. And we had our first historic hearing involving now Justice Goodwin Liu. Also, and I know that my CCJ colleagues will acknowledge this, that now we have, I believe, 21 of 50 female Chief Justices in the United States. And we also know that in law schools in California and across the country, women are majority members of the entering class and the graduating class. And so when I think about our history, from 100 years to when we put on the path to diversity to where we are now, I remark that it is incredible that we have come this far, but there's work to be done. But could the suffragists have known that in 2011, California would be a minority-majority state, that we would have 10 million immigrants? And I know from personal experience that immigrants bring to the table optimism, enthusiasm, patriotism, faith, and hope, and that we bring a diversity of thought that is nowhere else on this planet but through the accumulation of our experiences here in California. And who would know that really in California in 2011, according to the last census, that women are close to, if not the majority in this state. So now we ask ourselves, now more than ever, government needs to be diverse. And the judicial branch especially, because we rely on the public trust and confidence in resolving very complex, difficult issues in courtrooms. And so until we reflect the diversity of our population, we continue to wonder whether we have the true public trust and confidence. And it's through diversity of the population that's reflected in the bench and bar that we are able to solve problems, because people know that we walk in those shoes, we have those experiences, and we have the same lens from which we make decisions. And so when I talk to you tonight about diversity, I like to call it the facets of diversity, because diversity to me means so many more things than gender. As you know, it means ethnicity, it means race, but it also means experience and worldview and professional experience. It means religion, it means culture, it means a number of things. And our communities are diverse, but like the communities we serve, the bench and bar are equally diverse. And I will say that when we look at California and we look at the 58 trial courts alone, we have courts that are as diverse as 1,200 people in Alpine County with 2 judges. And if you travel down I-5, you'll come to a place called Los Angeles that has 10 million people and 600 judges. And everywhere in between, you will find pockets of 6 judges and 5,000 people and 11 judges and 1 million people. But that reflects the diversity of population and geography. And every one of these courts and every one of these 58 counties needs, has different practices, different rules, but nevertheless, as Chief Justice and as Chair of the Judicial Council, the policy-making body of the judicial branch, I feel it is our duty to serve their right to have equal access throughout California, regardless of whether they're in a well-funded county and regardless of whether or not they are represented best in the legislature or at the executive level. And so I submit to you it is our duty to reflect diversity in the courts. And we're doing a good job of it, but there's work to do. And that will be my drumbeat from this speech on for the rest of my career, I believe, because we still have work to do. As much as the California Supreme Court is majority female, and now also Asian American majority, the point is that when you look at the judicial branch, from 5 years ago, we really haven't changed that much in reflecting the diversity of the state of California. For example, in 2006, women judges were about 26% of the population of the judges, of up to 1,700 jurists. We are now 31%, a growth of 5%. But when you look at Latino judges, we are 8% now, where previously we were we've only grown by 2% or so. When you look at African American judges, we've only grown by 1.2%. African American judges are 5.6% of the judicial branch. When you look at Asian American judges, we've grown by 1.2%, and we are 5.4% of the judicial branch. So there is work to do, and there is a concerted effort to continue to have the bench reflect the population. But of course, the bench looks to the bar to stock our population on the bench. And there's work to do there as well, as we all know. I rely on surveys, which are not necessarily reliable, and they're older. But we know that in 2001, when the State Bar did do a survey, we found that the minority population of the State Bar was 17% in 2001. And 5 years later, again a survey, hard to tell, but we take the pulse of it, it was 15%, a little over 15%. So if we were trend people, we would say, well, in 5 years, it appears to be that the minority population of the State Bar has declined, and that even at its best numbers, the minority population in the State Bar does not reflect the populations of minorities in California. But I am hopeful and optimistic because the bar has tremendous leadership, most recently by Bill Hebert and now by John Streeter. People who are conscientious, who are smart and moving the bar forward. And I know that just, a couple of weeks ago, the bar conducted an anniversary of the Summit on Judicial Diversity. And I know there's thought about completing another survey so we can get a pulse of the State Bar as it stands today in 2011. And when I think about the hope for the future in the bench and bar, I rely on anecdotal experience because this spring I had the opportunity to be the keynote speaker at several law schools, including my alma mater, UC Davis. And what I learned was by sitting on the dais and watching these enthusiastic, inspirational, and hopeful students file by, is that we are in good hands. When I was in school in 1984, women were the slight majority in the entering class. But the minority population was much, much smaller. And I will tell you, I knew everyone. But now, as I understand, for example, UC Davis, I understand in 2011 that 4 out of 10 graduates are African American, Latino, or Asian American. And so when you see the graduates file across the stage, it's an ideal of hope in the pipeline for more diversity in the bench and bar reflecting the state. Also, we know that these numbers, again, from the State Bar show that I think approximately 8,900 aspiring attorneys took the bar exam. 4,600 or so passed, and we know of the 4,600, approximately 49% are women. So we are filling the pipeline. We are moving forward. There is work to be done, and we have a population with which to do it. But I will also tell you in my 20 years on the bench that diversity depends on opportunity. Diversity in the bench and bar require that. And where is opportunity? Opportunity exists in leaders like Joan Dempsey Klein and Dean Ramey, and the deans of other law schools like Kevin Johnson at UC Davis, and Dean Chemerinsky at UC Irvine, and Dean Wu at Hastings, because in the pipeline, they get the students that they can cultivate into thinking about themselves in the future of the bench and the future of the bar.